What's up, everybody? Raj Nation here. Before we launch into this week's episode, let me give you the newest dates on the Hype Man Roadshow speaking tour. As of the release of this episode, I just wrapped up TravCon in Las Vegas. Up next, coming up on September 13th, is the Forward Collective Summit. I'll be performing live my brand new song, Wake Up, Raise Up, at the conference, as well as speaking on how we can use storytelling within our own heads to overcome biases. After Forward Collective on September 20th, I'll be speaking at the Enterprise Sales Forum alongside sales leader Jeff Badgerick. It'll be a live recording of the Discover Your Inner Awesome podcast. That's happening in Chicago, Illinois as well. Then it's off to Patriot Boot Camp in Denver, Colorado on September 29th. I'll be delivering my How to Not Suck at Pitching Your Startup workshop there for the veteran entrepreneurs in attendance. Followed by, on October 15th, the 2112 Incubator here in Chicago, Illinois. I'll also be doing my How to Not Suck at Pitching Your Startup workshop there. And then on October 17th at Ann Arbor Spark, the incubator up there in Ann Arbor, Michigan, I'll be giving the same workshop, How to Not Suck at Pitching Your Startup. Lots coming up here over the next couple months. I'd love to see you out at one or multiple of these events. For full information and links to where you can get tickets to all of these different events, you can go to startuphypeman.com/speaking. Again, that's startuphypeman.com/speaking. And now, on with the show.
That's an interesting insight about it doesn't fall in the way. It's gotten to the point in our conversation where we're just fixing each other's hair.
Welcome, everybody, to Startup Hype Man's Discover Your Inner Awesome podcast. My name is Rajiv Nathan, aka The Raj Nation. I am your show's host and the founder and creative force behind Startup Hype Man, helping startups everywhere build their hype by creating a message that sings. This is Discover Your Inner Awesome, the only show where you get to eavesdrop on conversations with entrepreneurs, artists, and musicians about the stories, the journeys, the struggles, but most importantly, the questions. The questions that help creative thinkers like you and I better understand who we are, what we're doing, and how we can do it better. It's about the mindset, processes, and strategies to help you build a badass company. Now, before we dive into today's conversation, I would like to extend an invitation to join our tribe at startuphypeman.com. Enter your email address there, and you will never miss another episode of this show, getting an email in your inbox every single week when we drop new episodes on Mondays. You'll also get my weekly thoughts, strategies, and ideas on how to build up your hype and create a raving fan base. All right, let's dive in now to this week's conversation of Discover Your Inner Awesome. Today on the show, we welcome back for a third time, that's right, three times, Matt Wilson, the co-founder of Under30Experiences. Amigo, welcome back to the show.
Thank you. It's been a little while. I was afraid we sucked too bad last time you came on my podcast and you didn't want to talk to me anymore.
That's a story for another day. But so for everyone who's listening, Matt had the honor of being the first ever guest on this show back in, I think it was 2015 when we launched it. And at that time, that was with my previous business with first co-founder, first co-host. Matt was then a guest with my second co-host, and I'm now doing the show solo. So this is our first time you've been on my show in a one-on-one format. So this could get a little bit more interesting than it has been in the past.
Excellent. I'm outliving your co-host. This is great.
And if everyone listening, if you have not listened to Matt's previous episodes, they're really good ones. It's funny because like the first episode ever, I don't think we really knew what we were doing with the podcast, so it was just kind of like so much like spitballing and free talking. But it's still one of my favorite episodes, and that was recorded, in a hotel bedroom in Belize. Now, what I want to do with this episode, because in your previous appearances, we haven't really done this, is talk through like how did you get here, but really to set the table, our topic for today is how do you turn customers into community members? Sort of at a high abstract level, can you just give our listeners a window into why this is something that's important to you?
Okay, it's interesting that you say how to turn customers into community members because we actually lead with community. And so we try to turn our community into customers. So we say that we have an inclusive community of travelers ages 21 to 35, and we try to create an inclusive community. So it's not exclusive, meaning, first of all, with that expression started because under 30 experiences sounds very exclusive, and we're like, no, if you want to come on one of our trips or you want to come to one of our meetups and you're cool, just come. Don't worry about it. Leave all that at the door. So that's why we started saying that. But really, we wanted to create a place where people could come, get to know each other within the community, and then if they want to make a commitment of anywhere between $645 to, I don't know, $3,500 to come on a trip with us somewhere, we've already broken down the barriers because they've come out to a happy hour or to a hike or to a kickball game or gone kayaking in their local city. So we really lead with community first and make that the most important thing, is that everybody feels welcome, everybody feels cool. So if you make a major investment to travel somewhere abroad with us, then you probably know what you're getting yourself into. And then, yeah, you can be a customer, which we don't actually call them customers. We just call them travelers.
And I like that a lot. And sort of, I think we're already getting a window into how you think about this stuff. So let's sort of like dial it all the way back, take it back to the OG days, and maybe we can see how this mindset came about in the first place. So you grow up on the East Coast, like New Jersey area, am I right?
New York.
New York.
Thank you.
Oh crap. That's a huge mistake to say a New Yorker grew up in New Jersey. All right. But it wasn't like New York City, right?
No, it was upstate, about an hour.
Yeah, upstate. That's a whole different people from New York City.
It's a lot different than Jersey.
Yeah. You attend John Jay High School, which I'm just going to assume is named after one of the authors of the Federalist Papers, little U.S. history reference for everyone there.
That is correct. First Supreme Court Justice of the United States of America.
I like how you said that as if you're like on the witness stand. Yes, that is correct. So growing up, you're going to a high school there. What's your environment like? Is it something where you're interacting with people from all different walks of life, or is it something where you're seeing the same type of person every day?
Honestly, I thought it was pretty gangster, but when I asked my friends this the other day when I went home, they were like, no, we live in the sticks and not in the hood. And so I thought it was a lot more tough environment, maybe because I was just a angry 15-year-old and saw kids getting arrested. It was probably for stupid stuff, selling weed across the street at Dunkin' Donuts or whatever. But I thought it was a pretty diverse place. But honestly, when it came down to it, it was this is John Jay East Fishkill. If we have any New Yorkers out there, and it's a high school surrounded by IBM. So literally, IBM has this massive campus upstate, and our high school, which was a very big high school, I think what I graduated with 500 kids. We probably started with 700 kids. Just that right there alone says it was probably a fairly diverse place.
Wait, so you started with 700 but graduated with 500. Did you lose 200 in the process?
I think we did. It just didn't see. It was a big public high school. And so I thought I was exposed to a lot of different people, but probably at the end of the day, it was probably pretty white and pretty middle class. This is not Westchester. This is more like Poughkeepsie, but not city of Poughkeepsie, if that makes any sense to anybody who knows anything about the tri-state area.
Is there a particular, I guess, like lesson you learned growing up that sticks with you today?
How to mow lawns, how to do landscaping. That was my grind while I was in high school. Actually, probably started in about 6th grade.
That's pretty cool. So that's like I guess that's like entrepreneurship step one for you, right?
For sure. I mean, that was actually after selling golf balls on eBay that I picked out of a local Golf course, that makes me sound pretty white, I guess. Kid with internet access in 1995 and a golf course somewhere near his house. Other than that, the lemonade stand, I definitely had lemonade stands. Now we're going back to like kindergarten. But yeah, I mean, that was probably the big one was landscaping.
Okay, so you go to college at Bryant University. If I recall from your previous times on the show, there was like this triumvirate of either Bryant, Babson, or Bentley, wasn't it right? The three Bs?
Yeah, the three Bs of business in the Northeast. That also sounds pretty white. That was a lot different from my high school. This was much more upper middle class kids, and everybody seemed the same. And I really enjoyed it at the time, but then once I became a traveler, I was like, well, that was the stuffiest place on the face of the planet.
Well, while you're at Bryant, you have an experience as a CEO. And what I mean by that is the Collegiate Entrepreneurs Organization. I'm going to guess you're president of it. You probably founded it for the chapter for the school as well, maybe.
Yes, that is also correct, Mr. Nathan.
As president of Collegiate Entrepreneurs Organization, like what were you doing, and how did you step into entrepreneurship while doing this?
All right, so I come from New York to Puritan New England, and I think I'm a hustler, and I show up and I want to start a business there on campus, and I realize that I realized that everybody there is on the fast track to corporate America, and Jack Welch comes and speaks at Bryant.
Jack Welch.
The Jack Welch, world famous CEO of General Electric, or former CEO of General Electric, probably at that point. And he touches on entrepreneurship like 4 or 5 times during his talk, and I get up there as an 18-year-old freshman, and I'm like, tap the mic, I'm like, hi, Mr. Welch. I just had a quick question here representing the freshman class of 2004. And I asked him, like, what do you think about Bryant having an entrepreneurship major? Because I already was not feeling like I was going to fit in at this place. And the president of the university was sitting next to him having a fireside chat. This guy was a former congressman, and he rolled his eyes. And he was like, well, you should have gone to Babson because this is a corporate finance and accounting school. He didn't say that, but that was the
That's what the eye roll indicated?
Absolutely. And so pretty much without any help from the faculty or staff, we decided, myself and like 5 other people in the room decided, well, let's start a chapter of the Collegiate Entrepreneurs Organization and see where it goes. And we ended up bringing national accolades to the school through the CEO chapter, winning best chapter in the country 2 years in a row. We ended up in like the Boston Globe, and then the same guy who was rolling his eyes, President Makeley, was messaging me from his BlackBerry to tell us congratulations.
That's pretty sweet. You kind of, I guess with that, I don't think you really ever stepped into quote unquote corporate America, because after Bryant, you then have a stint with Zarly. And I don't think Zarly exists anymore, but at the time, Zarly was one of the new Silicon Valley startups, which was essentially like a TaskRabbit, which I do think still exists. So you can like hire like a runner to get your groceries, get something from Home Depot. I told you before we started recording that I actually was in USA Today randomly because I ordered off of Zarly, and the reporter showed up with the runner who wanted to ask why I was using Zarly. But what did you do with Zarly?
So with Zarly, this is unfortunate. The cable guys here in Costa Rica have just shown up.
Oh no!
So basically, with Zarly, I was asked to help launch the brand in the United States. In New York. I got a bit distracted there for a second, but I was asked to launch the brand in New York. It was a startup weekend company started by Ashton Kutcher, and founded by
Eric Costa was the one.
Yeah, that was one of the co-founders. Put in to a lot of money put into some really big vendors, really big venture capitalists, and it was a cool opportunity. But after raising $12 million and having Meg Whitman be the founder or the chairman of the board, well, it didn't work at the end of the day.
Well, and I guess I kind of like chopped up the timeline a little bit, because Zarly actually was step 2 for you-ish. While you were actually still at Bryant, you co-found Under30 CEO with Jared O'Toole, who's also your co-founder for Under30Experiences, right?
Yes. So Under30 CEO actually came first. We started that in 2008, 2009, and that was our big way to grow our credibility and make sure that people found out who we were. We were learning how to use the tools up there. Twitter, right? That was the birth of Twitter. We were learning how to get people to our blog for the first time ever. We were learning how to build a personal brand for the first time ever. So, that was what we were starting to do with Under30 CEO, and we grew a really nice audience of people.
Well, and at Under30CEO.com, it really was like a media site, right? Where people could come and learn essentially different tactical advice, mindset advice around being an entrepreneur, ultimately being a CEO, for the specifically under 30 crowd. You're doing this while you're still in college, essentially learning entrepreneurship. Did you have any like, who the hell are we to be talking about this stuff moments?
I mean, of course, but we were also 22-year-olds and didn't want to get a real job. And it was more about community. So this, I think, is why you went back as far as you did, is because we said there have to be so many other people out there right now that we just had one of the worst economic crises known to man. People are losing their jobs. People are not getting jobs. There have to be a lot of other people out there trying to figure out how to start businesses. So that was the key. And so it was more about building community. To launch that blog, we said, all right, well, there are not a lot of personal development bloggers out there at the moment. And there are not a lot of entrepreneurship bloggers out there at the moment, especially targeted at young people. And so we reached out to probably the top 10 or 15 young professional bloggers. That's all there really were at that time who had any type of notable following. And we said, hey, do you guys want to be part of a community? Would you like to write for our site? And we kind of started the first super blog, if you will. And that was able to get us some nice traction, because we used their writing, their articles, and so it wasn't always us building or giving advice per se. We were bringing good people together who were building businesses for an environment, a community in which people could learn.
Well, and the popularity got pretty big, right? Like you were at a point, I want to say, where you were getting hundreds of thousands of page views. I mean, definitely every month, but perhaps even more frequently than that, right?
Sure. Unique visitors, as they used to be called, or users. We had, at our peak, and we're talking now about 2011 was our peak before we started with Under30Experiences, but we had 500,000 users per month, and we're talking about that's 2 million page views per month.
Yeah, that's really impressive. And what strikes me about this, as you talk about how do you treat even this as a community, is you didn't try to do everything yourself. You looked to other people who were smart, perhaps smarter than you in certain areas, who had expertise in certain areas, and you invited them to be part of what you were building. Now, that to me, that's something that I'm personally working on right now as I work to grow my business. But on top of that, I think it's something that if you look at the larger startup ecosystem, I think everyone is not everyone, a lot of people are in this mindset of trying to like protect every element that they're doing. And, we can't share this with people. We can't share that. So can you just kind of talk through like how you were going about this, and sort of just in a way that you had it as open format to get people to come to your platform?
Yeah, I mean, people could reach out to us if they were reading, if they were all of a sudden on Twitter searching hashtag entrepreneur. Like that used to actually be a very viable strategy when these tools were young. Before everybody in the world were on there, and there weren't tons of people out there online that knew these tools existed, and so we were just a lot of individual reach outs. We would reach out to people who had blogs. We would get to know them, and then we started, once our site had nice readership, right? After we had consistent writers who would maybe write once a week or once a month for the site, well, then we would get people together in local cities. I mean, the day we started the site, we actually had a launch party, a place called Bar of Chicago, at the Collegiate Entrepreneurs Organization's conference it must have been 2008.
But this wasn't in Chicago, right?
This was in Chicago.
Oh, it was, okay.
Things got a little bit crazy, but it was about building a community, because that's what we came from at the university level. So we said, well, why doesn't something like this exist out there for smart, young, innovative, passionate people?
Well, and as you're doing this, like you mentioned, this is on the heels of the financial collapse. Like, how are you making money through this process? Are you moving in with mom and dad? Like, what's going on?
So, short answer, we were not.
Because you also didn't raise capital for this either.
No, this was started with $50 in a Twitter account. I mean, our first website was outsourced to India for $500 on Elance probably. So that's all it took at this point. Now you could get that outsourced. Somebody could come up with build you a WordPress blog for even cheaper than that, I'm sure, or you could build it yourself easily. But that's the exciting thing about this is we didn't know how we were going to make money, but we were, again, 22 years old, and so we had our side hustles, and so we grew our own personal brands and our site, and opportunities started to come our way. People saw, hey, how did you build community around your blog? How did you get eyeballs to your site? How did you figure out search engine optimization? How do we use these social media tools? And that stuff was all really pretty cool in 2008. We were definitely ahead of the curve. Now everybody and their mother is a social media consultant, and it's very saturated. But that's how we first started making money, is we would bring on clients and do consulting. And then when the site got to the point where it could support ad traffic and we had a nice email list and we could sell things that were helpful to business owners, then of course we started to dive into affiliate marketing and create other streams of revenue.
Yeah, and that's really where it became like the true media platform, because you have the ad revenue and essentially sponsors of your content.
Exactly.
Yeah. So this then leads into the sort of, I'd call it the game changer for our generation now, at least in the travel space, Under 30 Experiences. I know you've talked about it before on the show, but not everyone has listened to your past episodes, although I recommend they do go back and listen to your past episodes here. Can you give the sort of quick backstory on how Under 30 Experiences comes about, your the chain to the desk story?
Sure. Okay, so we actually skipped a quick landscaping story in there.
Oh, yeah, please.
I want to pepper that in because this was kind of the come to Jesus moment. And I'm not a religious person, but it was still a come to Jesus moment because it was 2008 and it was obviously a very difficult time. People were not getting jobs and we were desperately trying to figure out how to make money.
Back with more Discover Your Inner Awesome in just a moment, but first, are you an early stage startup? If so, you're probably running on the messaging treadmill where you're trying to figure out how to pitch your company, how to tell the story, how to communicate, market, and sell this thing that you've built. But for every step you take forward, you get pulled back one, just like you're on a treadmill, because you're either too in the weeds, too technical, or your attention is pulled in too many different directions. Oh, and on top of that, you're facing the everyday mental crisis of being an entrepreneur where you're thinking to yourself, well, maybe I am crazy. Maybe I should have listened to my family and just gotten that safe and secure 6-figure job. Guess what? It's time to get off the treadmill. Introducing Hype Man Academy, my brand new, affordable, equity-free virtual accelerator designed to build a marketing playbook for your startup so you can confidently pitch investors with a clear and compelling message and go out and market and sell to get your first 10 or 20 or 30 customers. Hype Man Academy is a weekly live online workshop where you work alongside your fellow founders, support and help one another, and get one-on-one access with me through virtual office hours. For information on joining the next cohort, visit startuphypeman.com/hypeman-academy. That's startuphypeman.com/hypeman-academy. Fill out an application and let's discuss. Back now to our regularly scheduled programming.
My mom was in real estate and her business totally crumbled at that time. And so we had to move from the house where we were living, the house where I grew up in into a small apartment together. And she kind of came to me to let me know that she was happening. And she's like, so how about this website you're building? How's that going? No, she didn't say it like that.
It's like that Family Guy Stewie Griffin working on the novel thing. How you coming on that novel there?
Yeah, basically, or that's what it felt like. Although she was a lot more kind about it, and I realized that I need to get a real job and help pay some of these bills. I can't just float off of mom at this stage in the game. And so went on Craigslist, found the first job that I could find, and it was for $15 an hour. It was a driver, and I thought, all right, I'll be wheeling and dealing. I had my first generation iPhone, and I'll be able to work from on the road. I'll drive around, and I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing here. Turns out it was for a landscaping crew, and the driving job was for a dump truck with an 18-foot trailer and a crew of Mexican migrant workers. And the first day in the job, when I sat on the truck, the foreman was like, the only way to earn these guys respect is if you get out there and start working with them. And so these guys worked me over, backbreaking, 22-year-old little gringo out there. I definitely earned my stripes, and then came home every night and moonlit the business and hustled to get this off the ground. So I say that because I had that. You do that for enough months in a cold winter in Poughkeepsie, New York. You're like, how the hell are we going to make money? We need to figure something out fast. Our original ideas were like, oh, let's help people start websites and buy their domain names and earn $3 a pop on GoDaddy, and that just through affiliate marketing, and that just wasn't going to pay the bills.
Yeah. Let me can I just cut you off for a second? Because I want to emphasize something that you spoke about there. So this is something that I always have to check myself on, and I hope other founders do as well, is, we're building our different businesses, our companies, empires, whatever. And there are days that are hard, right? There are days that are good, but there are a lot of days that are hard. However, what we are doing, like me building a business right now, is not the same as hard work. What you did, physical manual labor, is backbreaking labor, is hard work. Like being on a rice paddy and picking rice, that's hard work. And I think that's something that probably gives you literally and metaphorically a nice backbone, but it's something that it creates discipline. And on top of that, it's a good sort of gut check that as bad as things get with the, essentially all the technology companies that we're all out there building now, it is not, it might be a hard day, but it is not the same as hard work.
I agree. And because I have I guess I could say a background in physical manual labor, I know I can always go back to that, right? Or if, I don't know, one of the things I love living here in Costa Rica, where I'm talking to you from today, I know that if I needed to buy a piece of property, if I needed to buy a farm one day if the world came to an end and just grow my own food and be there forever in the jungle, I could probably get away with that. And so having those base skills, I remember those hard days, and I don't know, mentally, to be honest, I think that this is another topic, but I think that possibly the mental game or working yourself mentally is a lot more difficult than working yourself physically. And that means no disrespect to anybody who works hard out there physically. I really have a lot of respect for people who work hard and are laborers. But a lot of times the mental stuff can be more difficult, in my opinion. I'm just throwing that out there.
Yeah, and I think it's sort of like, how do you want to interpret what is hard, what is difficult, right? But at the end of the day, I think if you gave someone who is doing physical, hard manual labor and said, you could do this, or you could sit at a computer and do work, what do you think is easier? I think they'd say, sitting at the computer sounds a little bit easier.
Of course.
Now, to get back to sort of where you were headed with the story, so you're kicking around ideas. You're like, okay, maybe we can help people start up websites or whatever. You're kicking around these ideas. Go ahead.
We need high price items. We're trying to sell people like GoDaddy, and we're trying to sell people like GoDaddy domain names where they buy their domain name for $9 and we get 90 cents, and there just wasn't enough volume in that. And we tried to do a lot of other things, selling people. We tried to sell a lot of different tools for entrepreneurs, but we didn't have the product that was really going to pay the bills. And we eventually built the volume, right? Once we got to 500,000 users and we had some big clients, corporate clients that we were pushing on our site and sponsored articles and all that, that was great, right? We were able to build Under 30 CEO into a six-figure business, but it was a lot of hard work. Okay, there's that word again. It was a lot of hard work, right? But the prices of the things that we were selling were not high enough. So that's when you see these media companies getting into conferences and retreats and high ticket coaching and seminars. Yeah, of course, they're trying to sell you things that cost a lot of money. And honestly, that when the retreat idea came about, we're fast forwarding a little bit, it was a lot more viable to us because we knew that we could make a little bit more than 90 cents at a time, right? And you can also lose a lot more, don't get me wrong, and we did at the beginning of Under 30 Experiences.
Yeah, and sort of it starts to grow. I don't necessarily want to say like super quickly, but it grows very, I think you'll appreciate this word, mindfully. Today Under 30 Experiences does how many trips a year?
Oof. 250 trips, 300 trips maybe.
So that's almost every day of the year you have a trip going.
Starting, right? There's 50 weeks in the year. So right now we have 5 trips running. We have one to Costa Rica. We have 2 going to Peru right now. We have 1 going to Iceland right now. We have 1 going through France and Spain right now. We have 1 in Italy right now. That's at least 5. We have France starting on Sunday. That's 6. So yeah, we got trips running. It was not always like this. It started with 1 trip.
Right, and that's right. See, that's where we're at today is 200-ish trips. But back in, was it like 2012? It was, can I just get like a handful of people to go on this trip to Iceland, right?
Yes, and that almost did not happen.
So talk us through how. So you decide like retreats might be a good idea. So then how are you like, okay, let's figure out this travel thing?
Okay, so the real story is that I was working. Okay, remember when I said that we started to do consulting? That's when Zarly approached me. That's when I was open to having opportunities where I would join a team and help them roll out a brand. They had all this venture capital. They had a really interesting product, a lot of credibility. It was a startup weekend company. It looked good. So I'm working there. Plus we have Under 30 CEO going, and we're really building the audience on that. So things are starting to, it's like the peak of my my life in New York, I would say. And I got a random email from a blog contributor that asked if I would like to come to Iceland to be their ambassador of climate change and blog about the experience to see how climate change was affecting young entrepreneurs' businesses. And I knew nothing about climate change, nor honestly did I care about climate change, or was it anything within my wheelhouse. But then I saw all of the things that they were offering. In fact, a trip to Iceland and going to the glaciers and the volcanoes and the waterfalls. And I skied on peaks that had never been skied before, and it was just an insane trip, and it was free. And so I just had that life-changing moment, literally standing on a glacier, and I was with this Icelandic mountain guide. His name is Siggy. We still work with Siggy today. Our travelers in Iceland are in his hands, actually, as we speak. And he just wanted to light up a cigar and drink a scotch on top of this amazing glacier, looking out at the volcano that erupted in 2010, Eyjafjallajökull, that stopped all the air traffic between North America and Europe. And I was like, holy shit, what am I doing with my life? Why am I grinding it out behind a computer? And why is the rest of our generation stuck behind their computers? I want to do this more for myself, but I would also like to pay forward this life-changing travel experience to other people. And that's when Under 30 Experiences started. And so we started kicking around ideas. Hey, how can, with Siggy and I, how can we bring some more people to Iceland? Because he was a young guy, 25 years old at the time, trying to grow his business in Iceland. And that's when I went back, talked to Jared, my co-founder of Under 30 CEO, and I said, why don't we try to do a retreat to Iceland? We partnered with the Startup Iceland conference, and we got invited by the president of Iceland to bring our group of young entrepreneurs to his home and meet with him to talk about entrepreneurship and startups. And so it wasn't like, I say it like, oh, it was a big ticket item. And yeah, sure, of course, that was the realization. But it was also that we need to go and we need to do this because life is short, and this is a pretty cool opportunity regardless.
Yeah, and as this thing grows over the next couple years, my first encounter with it, I think it was 2013 is when I stumbled onto Under 30 CEO, started reading the articles, and I didn't know you yet at this point. And then you were actually leveraging the traffic to Under 30 CEO and like redirecting it almost to Under 30 Experiences, because the way I found out about, and for just shorthand now, we'll call it U30X, is on U30 CEO, there was a little thing on the side of the page that said, hey, do you want to travel? And I was like, yeah. So I click on it, and then it takes me to the U30X page, and it shows me, at that time, there were 3 offerings. There was Costa Rica, Iceland, Nicaragua. Actually, there was 4, Nicaragua and Alaska. And I remember, like, I read the thing, and actually, originally, if I recall, it was positioned more towards entrepreneurial types, right?
That's right, because our main source of lead generation was from Under 30 CEO. Under 30 CEO, we had all our clients, and then we slowly started buying our own ad space and dedicating our own resources to try to grow this side business.
And then, so I end up taking a trip to Costa Rica. I think that was January 2014. That's where I meet you, because you're actually the trip leader for all the trips at that point. So you're the co-founder, CEO of this company. You still have Under 30 CEO running in the background, and you're traveling around the world. I guess around Central America and Iceland at that point. How are you doing all this at once?
So how was I doing this all at once? I don't want to say not very well, but as best as I could pull off. So I was obviously stretched thin, and this definitely put a strain on my relationship with my co-founder, Jared, at the time, because it eventually came to, all right, look, I got back from Iceland. We had our first trip, but I'm packing up my expensive ass apartment in New York, and I'm putting all my things in a backpack, and I'm going to go and travel. And so I went down to Costa Rica and went up to Nicaragua. I ended up going to Indonesia for 2 months. So, with the stop in Dubai, and just started really, really traveling hardcore and living the life of a digital nomad, also before it was played out. But that was like, those were the early days. And so then Jared started to take over Under 30 CEO. I started taking over Under 30 Experiences. It just suited both of our personalities and what we wanted at that point in our life. And so he started running one, I started running the other, and we were moving very, very quickly. And I was scouting out new places to bring people for Under 30 Experiences. And also I have the background in the outdoors from upstate New York. And I was in the Boy Scouts all my life and grew up camping and skiing and hiking and all that kind of stuff. And so I had the trip leader skills. I had my 3.5 years of high school Spanish that I hacked together quickly. And so that became the start of it. And so leading trips, and then when I wasn't leading trips, working as hard as I could on blog content, on marketing, on social media, spreading the word about Under 30 Experiences, pitching the press. Those were all things that I did from my laptop, just traveling around the world.
Yeah, and again, come back to the idea of like the mindful growth. It was 1 trip, then it was 4 trips, then I think in 2015 you had like 14 trips. Something like that. I might be getting the timeline wrong. And then by 2016, It was up to like 50. And then last year, 100 something. And then now this year, 2018, you're at around 200, which is, again, it's really, when you think about it, it doesn't sound like that's over 4 years or so, 5 years maybe, which it's actually not that much time. Like, it does grow pretty fast. It's just that 1 year at a time, you're adding a bunch of new things, a bunch of new trips on. And now let's kind of get into like our topic conversation a bit more here around this idea of building community and having your customers be your community members. I'll sort of tell you like my first experience with U30X, and then I'll kind of like let you take it from there and sort of give your insight into why we did it this way. What I noticed off the bat when I went to the U30X site and I said, okay, Costa Rica looks interesting. Originally, you had to actually apply and be interviewed. And you talk to someone on the phone then who explains, here's what the trip is like, to make sure you're essentially like a decent human being. Now, the person who's interviewing me at the time was Liz Flores, someone who's one of my good friends now, one of your good friends now, but like you as the co-founder did not do that interview. How does Liz come into the picture here? Because this is a key point I want every founder who's listening to this to take note of, because you used a community member, right?
Yes, that's a good point. So I guess Liz was one of our community managers. So people would come on our trips. And also, just to back up, I know it sounds like mindful growth, and as Raj has alluded to, I'm into mindfulness and yoga and meditation like he is. And of course, this all started after I began traveling and started Under 30 Experiences, and my mind was opened up to new ideas. But it was also really insane growth. Like, it has grown really fast and seems quite overwhelming when you look at it. Now it's not a Groupon or a Uber or whatever you guys call them in the startup world, the unicorns. But it's
logistically a shit ton to manage.
Yes. So to point that out, once we started having a few trips, we'd have reunions. We'd have meetups when we'd have a few travelers that were all in Chicago together. We'd appoint someone to be the community manager because they loved it so much, and they wanted to do what they did on the trip, their trip to wherever. They wanted to bring a little bit back to their community and have good people to hang out with and be able to connect and have good conversations and do outdoor activities and meet them. And in the early days, it was entrepreneurial focused. And so, Liz was our community manager in Chicago. She is someone who joined a trip because her college professor told her about under30ceo.com. She joined a trip on Under 30 Experiences because it was kind of the next step. Like, she had been a blog reader for a very, very long time, and she said, well, yeah, finally I want to meet these guys and get more involved in the community. And she ended up coming on our trip, loved it, wanted to get more involved, approached us about a job. And so that's how Liz came into the picture. And her job was to go into her community and tell people about Under 30 Experiences, host meetups, etc. And yeah, I'm glad she interviewed you, and I'm glad you were accepted.
Yeah. Well, then we never would have met otherwise.
Exactly.
So what I hear when you talk about that is, this is like a literal example of a customer, someone who bought a trip and experienced a trip with your company, came back and said, how can I get more involved? And then you appointed her as Chicago area community manager. And then more and more people were asking you this question, how can I get more involved? And you were saying, well, we have this community manager program. And before you know it, there's these local hubs around the country. And I think now even like there's one in Paris or somewhere internationally, I think in France, right?
Sure. And
right. And this is a clear example of getting people to, like, allowing them to be more involved with your brand and with your overall like ethos and mission and why, beyond just that purchase. And this is something that, especially in the tech world, gets so overlooked because you're so hyper focused on customer acquisition, customer retention, monthly recurring revenue, that you disregard a lot of the like little touches you can add to a person's experience when they interact with you. And when you have people when you're able to essentially create ambassadors all around the country, you're allowing your brand to grow more organically. And you talk about these meetups, right? And these local community events. Those are actually things, they make zero money for the company. And in fact, they may actually cost the company a few dollars because you have to like host the meetup, like pay for meetup.com, maybe like, host the Eventbrite account, whatever that might be. And it's taking a longer term look to it though, right? Because you know that the person who comes to the meetup today might be interested in traveling next month or in 2 years, but you're essentially able to get them involved in, this is our belief about the world. This is what we want for people like you. So at the very least, just come have a beer with us.
No, and those are our marketing dollars that we spend there. We hardly spend any money on advertising, but we always say, let's reinvest in the community. Every time we try to do something new and let's hire this travel blogger and have them come on our trip and write about it for his or her audience, or we were pumping a couple $1,000s a month into Google Ads, or all these types of things. They never work as well as investing back into our community, because our trips honestly blow people's minds, because they change people's lives, because people have the time of their life, even if their life was not changed, then they want to stay involved with what we do, and they want to tell their friends about it. I mean, it's the most exciting thing that they do all year. It's a once in a lifetime type of thing to go on and visit these places. So to come on a trip with us and then want to tell all your friends, it's very natural. It's not like buying a toothbrush or a pair of yoga pants, right? Like, you see all these ambassadors pushing their yoga pants and trying to get people to sign or to buy them or whatever. But it's not. I mean, this is a huge, big ticket item, and it's very easy in that regard. And it's people focused. It's like, hey, let's get awesome people together. We know you're probably bored at home after work. Let's try to change your perspective on how you see the world.
Yeah, and it's really like what you're talking about here is it's having a good customer experience. Like, that's step one, I think, because something I often think about with anything someone's building is, how do you make, and I may have heard this quote from someone else, I don't remember. How do you make something so good, memorable, irresistible, whatever, that the person can't go to sleep without telling someone else about it? And that's really what these trips are like, right? It is, you get home and the first, or maybe while you're still on the trip, because you might have a Wi-Fi connection, you can't wait to tell your friend or friends about it. So it's having a really good customer experience out of the gate that gives people, without even having to tell them, hey, refer a friend and get, they're just automatically, they can't sleep until they tell someone else about it.
I appreciate that, and I think that you were an amazing case study for that, because you've been such a great ambassador, formally and informally, mainly informally, for the brand. And still, I don't know, 4 years probably after your first Costa Rica trip, we're still creating content around it and doing media, and we've become good friends, and you've told a ton of people about Under 30 Experiences.
Yeah, and because it was a transformative experience for me, and for everyone listening, I've now gone on 3 trips: Costa Rica, Belize, and then earlier in January, Tulum. And I think another key aspect here, and I say these things because from afar, like literally, because you're in Costa Rica, I observe the things that your company does, and I take mental note of them, and I say, how do I incorporate that, or how do I give that advice to someone else? And what I notice you guys have done so well, and it's whether it was intentional or not, we talked about at the start, people had to interview to be part of the program, right? Be part of a trip. Now, obviously, at 200 trips, you'd have to hire an outsourced customer service team to be able to do all those interviews.
Yes.
But you were looking for a specific type of person at the start, and I mean that in the sense of like, we want open-minded people. We want ambitious, driven people to be part of our community. So because you were doing these interviews at the start when it was still only a handful of trips, naturally, the people who, like, we can't go to sleep without telling our friends, most likely our friends are other open-minded, driven, ambitious people. So sort of like organically, the community then grows and you can stop doing the interviews. But the people that are being referred, more or less, are also of that same mindset. They're more of the type of people you want on your trip. So now, without having to do interviews when it's 200 trips a year, you're essentially naturally getting the type of traveler you want. And then on top of that, you've also, out of the gate, been very forthright with, like, in your messaging, like, no douchebags, no divas. Right? If you're going to be a headache, we don't want you on our trip. We want people who are accepting, etc. So those are like tactically the things I see you guys have done really well. And was that an intentional decision to say, hey, if we want it to grow to this with these kinds of people, we've got to start in this method with these interviews?
It sounds really good. And that is, you definitely are spot on about the strategy on how it played out. But I don't think it wasn't that far thought out. It's like, when you go to that amazing eco lodge in Costa Rica, Rancho Margat, and you look at the place and you're like, this place is amazing. It was so well thought out. And the owner kind of smiles and says, oh yeah, if you only really knew. It's the same kind of thing, but you're absolutely right. We wanted the right type of people because we were scared. We didn't want to go on vacation with someone who we might not have really liked so much, or who was going to be a diva, ego, or a complainer, as it probably still says somewhere on our website. Yeah. But we just were really lucky to build our tribe, if you will, of the right types of people who are looking for this trip for the right reasons. And also, it's interesting that no matter who people are in their personal life or their life at home, when they come on one of our trips, psychologically, it's their time where they can reset, and it's their time where they're solo travelers, right? Some people come with friends, but mainly if you come alone, you can be whomever you want on that trip. Nobody knows you. Drop all that, drop your ego, leave your ego at the door, and everyone is pretty much cool. Sure, once in a while you get someone who's like, this guy's on our trip, but we don't get guys who are coming solely for the purpose thinking it's spring break to hook up with chicks, right? Or like we don't get much of that kind of stuff at all, because we create a community where it's obvious that this is a safe place to travel, and we're all here for the right reasons. And we talk about sustainability a little bit on our trips. We talk about important topics that you begin to understand while you're traveling, and it's not just a party trip or a hookup trip, or oh my god, is this a solo trip or is this a singles trip, which answers to those are all clear no's, but we never have to say that. It's just the vibe that we give off, I guess.
Yeah, and I think it comes back to knowing what you're trying to create in terms of like the feel and the experience, and then making decisions almost inherently that align with that, which is something that, especially in the startup world, that stuff can get away from you. When you're working with technology, it can be easy to let the technology drive the decision making instead of the why or the mission drive the decision making.
I really like what you said, and I just wanted to add, when you talk about organic growth,
and this is like true organic growth here.
Yes, you called it mindful growth, and it didn't quite resonate with me. But when we always talk about organic growth, and it has evolved at an insane speed, in my opinion. But we're like driving a really nice F-150 right now, and it's a great truck, and we've built it. It's well built, and it's chugging away down the road, and nothing can stop it, right? But if you're driving a Ferrari, like some of these tech companies, one small slip up, one small messaging error, when you're going that fast, you're done. You lose sight, you lose your values. All of a sudden, you're hanging out the window like Jay-Z, smoking weed and.
Jay-Z does not smoke weed. Actually, he's very forthright about that. Lil Wayne, let's go with that. Lil Wayne.
you look like Lil Wayne, and yeah, you're probably gonna screw up.
Yeah.
Can I swear? Can I call it fuck up?
Yeah.
Cool.
Come on, you're the third time on the show. You don't know if you've cursed before.
I just did. I forgot.
Yeah, organic growth, and not just because you're eating a lot of organic foods on the trip themselves. Another thing, too, is, and I touched on this earlier, but you have been willing to, as the co-founder and CEO, get your hands dirty in the sense, like actually literally, but also, again, metaphorically, in the sense that the first handful of trips, you were the trip leader, and you kind of had to oversee what is the customer experience like on these trips. So that way, when I step away as trip leader, I know the experience that still needs to be maintained. You were showing up at the meetups when you could, right? When it was in your local area. You've been hosting the Live Different podcast for the last 3-ish years, where you're always able to promote under 30 experiences on the podcast. So these are things that I think you talked about, how with your travelers, you want them to check their egos at the door. But I think as a CEO, this is you checking your own ego at the door. And I know out of circumstance, you had to be the one leading the trips because you couldn't just pay some random person at the start. But I think when we think about different types of founders building their companies now, there is an ego element where where people are like, oh, I'm the CEO, I'm the founder. That type of work is beneath me. And I don't get the sense that you've I feel like everything that you've been able to scale now, processes wise, experience wise, etc., is because you had a hand in it at the start, because you didn't think about, oh, this is beneath me.
I really appreciate that observation, and as hopefully your listeners picked up on us, we had very humble beginnings, and it was two guys on the top of a glacier in Iceland saying, yeah, we should try to get some people together. And that trip almost failed. That trip almost never ran. We pulled that trip off by the skin of our teeth, begged and pleaded for people to come on this trip, and we know what that's like. We were broke when we started this. I mean, broke to a point. There were a lot of broke points in the in this, right? So seeing that and seeing the business form out of necessity, and yeah, I was the first trip leader for the first few trips, but almost the first 100 trips probably, or first 50 at least. So I was staffing every trip, and I had extreme control over how everything was going to be delivered. And you talk about customer experience, and honestly, it just made sure everybody had an amazing, amazing time. Every time we check into a new hotel, still to this day, I train our trip leaders to go around and ask everybody how their beds look. How are they? You guys got enough sheets and towels? You guys all good in there? Are you connected to the Wi-Fi or not connected to the Wi-Fi? Just making sure, or you're sitting at a dinner, look around. This is not about, hey, I'm going to eat my food first here because I think that I'm entitled to it. No, I'm always the last one to eat. I'm always making sure that everybody's enjoying themselves, that everybody has what they need, that their dietary restrictions are taken care of. And so it's about our travelers at all times. And otherwise, this never would have gotten off the ground. So we really try to make sure, and still today, when we have groups in Costa Rica, almost every week, I try to go and have dinner with them on Thursdays or Saturdays. They have yoga. I try to practice them, and my girlfriend teaches them. So, or I try to hop on hikes on the weekends. Even though I've done those same hikes hundreds of times at this point, I want to go and talk to the travelers, and that's an opportunity for me to not only inspect what's going on with our trip leaders and our vendors, but it's also a huge opportunity for me to be able to get to know the travelers. I'm not exactly Richard Branson flying economy on Virgin Airlines here, but it's still an opportunity for me to be able to go and make some new friends and see what our travelers are saying, and I have a blast doing it. I love it.
Yeah, and it's funny, as you were saying that, you're like, I'm not going to eat my dinner first. This is literally the title of Simon Sinek's book on leadership, Leaders Eat Last.
Okay, glad to hear.
I have one other question here before we start to wrap up, and this might be a challenging question, so if you need a second to think about it, that's cool. Everything we've been talking about so far related to Under 30 Experiences, someone listening could say, well, this is so much easier because it's a travel company and there's like a physical experience you're having, and like, no duh, people would want to tell their friends about a cool trip they went on. Can you respond to that? And like specifically speaking to someone who, let's say, are building a technology company, how can these principles be applied to them? And why is it not fair to just say, oh, it's just travel?
That's a good question. Okay. First thing that comes to my mind is you have to care about your customers, right? If you want them to come back, then you should really be doing something that you are passionate about. And if not, then you're probably in the wrong business. If you don't care enough to text your customers and make sure that they're happy with what you're doing, then, it's not just about, oh, it was an expensive trip and I want to make sure they don't write us a bad review. It's about really making sure that they're getting value out of what you're selling them, and that they know you care. If you're trying to build community, that means that they want to be part of something that you're doing. So if you don't care enough to check up on them all the time and express your passion for what they're doing and your concern for who they are as people, right? It might be technology, but it's got to be about people. Technology is just another way to reach a lot of people, and community is a way to bring people together. So if you're talking about a tech community, this is using technology to bring people together around a common good. But if you don't have a common good, then I don't know. It might not be. It might not be for you. And I don't want everybody listening to this to think that their app out there or their startup idea or whatever they're working on is going to have community, because it might not. But if you're doing it right I would say it should. I hope that makes some sense.
Yeah, definitely. And another, I meant to say it earlier when you were talking about sort of like the willing to go the extra step with interacting with customers too. Like you mentioned, your trip leader is like, hey, do you have enough sheets, hot shower, etc. Something I remember when I took the Belize trip was the group on day 1 or day 2 was largely disappointed in the hotel's breakfast offering.
Sure.
And you and Courtney at the time, who was the other trip leader, you guys just made a decision to say, hey, guys, we're going to take you somewhere else for breakfast and it's on us. Like, don't worry about having to pay more. That's a decision where the short-sighted person could be like, well, that's going to cut into our margins on this trip. But you're thinking of it from a standpoint of, but how do I make this the best experience for them?
Exactly. And if you just look at the case studies of the people who were on that trip, I mean, almost 70% of our travelers come back for a second trip. That's insane. And
I've come back for a third.
Yeah, you've come back for a third, and you've told, I don't know, 20 plus. You've had 20 plus people probably end up coming on our trips through you in some way, shape, or form. And yeah, it's because we splurged on that extra breakfast and fees. That's just one little example of how just try to do the right thing.
Yeah. So to wind this thing down, bring it home, can you let our listeners know where they can learn more about you, U30X, the podcast? How can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you like the podcast, you can listen to maybe 2 or 3 episodes with Raj.
I think we've done 3.
I think we've done 3. The Live Different podcast. That's on iTunes or Stitcher or wherever you want to go. Under30Experiences.com, though, if you want to get involved in our community, you can click community and find any major city in the United States. We probably have something going on, so that's really cool. And I still want to I want people to reach out to me after this, and if I can help them out in any way, I would love to read your email or get your Instagram message, matt@under30experiences.com or Matt Wilson TV across the social networks. And yeah, that's what I want to do. I want to build community with you guys.
And bear in mind here, everybody, Matt literally just said, I would like you to email me. So if there's any hesitation around like, ooh, like maybe he doesn't want to be bothered, he actually just said, please, I want to talk to you about this stuff.
I would be sad if I don't get an email from one of your podcasts.
Now, to wrap up, as we've wrapped up every episode over the past 100-something, we will give what we believe our answer is, our take-home answer to the topic question for today. And I'll go first, then Matt, I'll let you close it out. So the question was, how do you turn customers into community members? Now, I've got a few nuggets here that I pulled from the conversation. Number 1, the first thing is make sure you're providing a good customer experience. If that's not there, then there's nothing that someone wants to be part of beyond just the transaction. Number 2, can you incorporate the people early on who are part of your clientele, your experience, whatever, in a larger way? Like you said, the guy you were smoking a cigar on the top of the mountain or looking at the mountain or the volcano with, he's now like, and that was before you were running any trips. He's now your Iceland trip leader. So who are the key people early on who can become part of this thing as it grows? Because they're going to want to help you build the empire too. And then that goes to the community manager aspect that you've built with U30X. And sort of the third thing here is, and this is actually a challenge I'm going to pose to all the listeners, because I think it's something that your company has done very well, Matt, is ask yourself, how can my customers interact with my company when they are not purchasing something or directly using the product? How else can they interact with my brand? Matt, top line takeaways for how do you turn customers into community members?
I really like what you said at the end there about other ways in which they can interact, because it goes back to what I was explaining, that you don't have to buy a trip to be part of our community. If you just want to come to a meetup and meet us in Austin, Texas, and go to, we went caving last month in Austin, Texas. It was really cool. It cost everybody $18 to enter the cave and go have lunch, I think. If you want to just come and do that and meet some interesting people, then come do that. You don't need to go on a trip to Costa Rica that costs $995 or something. So giving people other ways in which they can interact, right? We have this entire layer that you might not know about in Under 30 Experiences unless you are part of it when it comes to personal development. So we also have yoga trips. We also have fitness trips. We also have several Facebook groups where people are talking about the challenges that they have, whether it comes to travel or whether it comes to their health and wellness, where they have a community of people around them who are saying, "Hey guys, I just quit my job. I'm thinking of starting #van life," right? Well, these people that are moving into their vans, and we have people like that in our community who are just traveling around, creating social media content, taking some months off, and they're going on tours and meeting other Under 30 Experience members, or they're organizing their own trips like you guys did to go out to Lake Tahoe, or they are finding workout partners, or there's a Fitbit group, there's a book club. None of this has anything to do with traveling per se, with, hey, I'm trying to sell you a trip to Spain. Here's what you can consume, and then that's it. No, we're all young travelers. We're all at a certain stage in our life, and we need other people to interact with on that same level, and that's very difficult to do in the 21st century in our modern day and age in our home cities. So let's create other ways in which people can interact with the brand, and that's what we've been able to do. So yeah, I really think that is key. That last one that you mentioned, and then people don't feel like you're just trying to sell them something. We're always talking about how can people be part of what we're doing rather than buy into what we're doing, because nobody wants to be sold.
Yeah, and my God, as you were saying those examples, I can't believe we didn't even touch on the fact that everyone who goes on a trip becomes part of this alumni Facebook group afterwards. So you're still always interacting with one another, with other travelers from different trips, with your own trip. There's also those city-based Facebook groups as well. And then you're letting people create within themselves, almost like independent of what things that you have to manage, right? Like there's like people started a U30X book club. 2-3 years ago, myself and 10 or 11 other people decided to, just within the U30X Facebook group, organize a Lake Tahoe Labor Day weekend getaway. And it was almost like we created like our own U30X trip, but you didn't like step in and be like, hey, we have to brand this and we have to like, whoa guys, you can't do this independent of us. You just let it happen naturally, because it's important at the end of the day that you provide a platform for people to have good experiences, not provide a platform of transactions and purchases.
Absolutely.
Matt Wilson. So I've been trying to make these episodes like 40-ish minutes, and I knew there was no chance that we would do that because there's just so much to talk about. But thank you for coming back for a third time, and what I'm sure is not the last time to the podcast.
Sir, it's always a pleasure. I hope I get to interact with some of your community, and thank you as always. It was fun.
That wrapped up our conversation. Did you, the listener, enjoy this episode? If so, the absolute best compliment you can give is a rating and review on iTunes. Ratings and reviews help more people find the show, therefore more people can discover their inner awesome. And if you want to extend that compliment further, while you're leaving that review, go ahead and subscribe to the show on whatever platform you listen, whether that's iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, or the various other networks in which you can find this show. For full show notes, references, and resources, as well as access to the over 100 episode archive, visit the podcast official site, www.discoveryourinnerawesome.com. And remember, for tips, strategies, and ideas on how to build up your company's hype with a message that sings, visit startuphypeman.com. Season 10's theme song is from Sir the Baptist. The song is called Dance with the Devil. It is off his album Saint or Sinner, which you can grab on Spotify, iTunes, Apple Music, and anywhere else digital music is distributed. That'll tie a bow on this one. Thank you again to this week's guest for joining us. I am Raj Nation. You have been listening to Startup Hype Man's Discover Your Inner Awesome podcast. We will see you next time, but in the meantime, take care and be awesome today.
This a dance with the devil, girl. Tell me what you gonna do. Yeah. This a dance with the devil, girl. And if you can't get it loose, then
it's a dance with the devil.